Council meeting to order May 11th, 2023. Cindy, are we in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, sir, we are.
Will you call the roll, please?
All right. Certainly. Mr. Ames?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Bryson? Here. Ms. Becker?
Here.
Mr. Alfred?
Here.
Mr. Stanford?
Here.
Mayor Perry?
Here. Will you join me in standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Join me in saying the civility pledge. I pledge to build
a stronger and more prosperous community by advocating for civil engagement, respecting others and their viewpoints, and finding solutions for the betterment of my city.
Thank you. So now I'd like to move on to appearance by citizens. I would like to remind our citizens that section 2-5-70 of the town's code limits each person to 3 minutes when addressing town council. At the end of the 3 minutes, you are asked to conclude your comments. Please maintain a decorum suitable for the meeting and refrain from using any profane, abusive, or obscene language. If you have any materials you'd like to give to town council, please do so after your 3 minutes to the town clerk. Zendaya, do we have any individuals signed up to speak today?
Yes, sir. Frank Babel?
Not yet, please. Let me get the microphone. Ready? See? Good afternoon. Whoopsie daisy. We have a dipsy little thing here.
Your time is up.
This has been my day. My computer crapped out at 11 o'clock. Can you hear me okay? I didn't need a mic. Good afternoon. Portland, Oregon. Davis, California. Boulder, Colorado. Fort Collins, Colorado. Madison, Wisconsin. What are these? These are the platinum level bike-friendly communities in America. There's only 5 of them. None are in the East Coast. You know, being a platinum has always been something that people chide us about. Yeah, why don't we become platinum? But it's really, really hard to be that, given that there's only 5 in the whole United States. It takes a long time. But things changed this weekend. Under very good authority, we learned that being the first bike-friendly community platinum award municipality on the East Coast is within our grasp. That is amazing. It reflects many decades of good decisions and hard work by our elected officials, town staff, and our POA leadership. But getting there won't be easy. It won't be a cakewalk. The question we have to ask ourselves is, why would we want to do that? What's the why? Well, first of all, it's going to help us solve some tough problems. We have congestion on our roads. Bikers and pedestrians are being killed. Kids are not riding bikes or walking to school like we did when we were young. There's excess speeding. And it'll help bringing our communities together and preparing for the onslaught of day trippers coming here from Hardyville and Bluffton. 15,000 homes that are under construction or under cycle get here. But more important, it'll create opportunity. We've seen evidence of that recently. We had 725 people who participated in Pedal Hill this weekend. With the Kiwanis and other volunteers, we parked 4,635 bikes at the RBC Heritage, and hundreds others were chained to the nearby trees. This weekend at the Beach Club in Sea Pines, with a parking lot that holds 50 cars, we counted nearly 300 bikes parked right next to the beach. People did this because biking is easy, it's safe, it's convenient, and it's fun. As for the what and how, what you're doing now is part of that pathway forward. New pathway segments, new adaptive crossings, the Corridors Project, and Bob Burmage's new bike safety video, and so on. But I'm happy to report that this weekend we were given a playbook to work with, and we have a name for it that Missy coined. It's called Pathways to Platinum Program. Going forward, it's going to depend on you. Do you embrace this vision? Do you want to be the first and only platinum bike-friendly community in the East Coast, one of 6 in the United States. Do you want to embrace a way of life that will have a positive and significant impact on the environment, community equity, safety, and our transportation system?
Mr. Babe, if you'll provide that to Zendaya,
Want
that'd
to
be
be
great.
the best of the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Zendaya, do we have anybody else signed up to speak?
Certainly. Mr. Alex Cruden?
I'll just speak.
Worked when we saw it on the shopping channel.
I think we need a chiropractor.
It's not in the budget, Al.
There is now. Next meeting.
Thanks. Thank you for the time. My point today is that if there's a modest improvement or enlargement of the current budget for pickleball as passed in the first reading or endorsed, pickleball courts could pay for themselves in less than 4 years. But first, let me make sure you all know that people currently pay to play pickleball. We don't expect it to be free. Currently, people in this area to play at the rec center or the old schoolhouse park pay $50 a year or $5 a day. These are not great courts, as a matter of fact. But if this body were to go ahead and take the 6 courts at Adriana, or Old Schoolhouse Park, and add 6 to them, all new, all pickleball, within 4 years, it would pay for itself. Now, our estimates, we're not construction experts, we know the figures can vary, but our estimates are it would cost about $600,000. You've currently got $250,000 on the budget there. If the charge were $100 for an annual membership and $10 a day, that would pay for itself. Those figures are low by the market. $50 a year is amazingly low. $100 a year is low. I can tell you, if you'd like, why 12 courts would pay for themselves faster than 6 courts would. But my point is, here's a real opportunity to address something that currently is an embarrassment, as you've heard. People from all over this country come here, and when they go away, they say, you know, the people that I play with pickleball here with are the nicest we've ever met, and the courts are the worst. Adriana Lane, Old Schoolhouse Park, sits there with the opportunity for reconstruction. It would be simple to do. I'm going to pass around a set of pictures with captions, very brief, current conditions at Adriana Park. Now, I've talked with Jennifer. She's been very helpful on how can we fix the current situation. My suggestion here is to take the opportunity and rather than try a patch, just go ahead and rebuild and add the 6 adjacent courts. So let me start these pictures around, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just hand them to Zendaya and she'll get them to us. We'll get them back. Yeah.
Any questions? Well, I really appreciate the fact that I have the feeling that all of you that I've ever talked with at any length or briefly want to go ahead with this. You like pickleball. Nobody's against it. The benefits have been shown. We heard at the May 2nd meeting of the health benefits, social benefits, economic, so let's do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cruden. Appreciate that. Zendaya next.
Certainly. Skip Hoagland. Mr. Hoagland?
Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor. I'm going to stick with the budget. Your honest service is appreciated. A legal Hilton Head chamber like the Greater Bluffton Chamber is appreciated. The town of Hilton Head, operated legally, is appreciated. A legally operated DMO by an ad agency is appreciated. Worthy accounting and invoices and matching receipts for the following. $7 million in 8 tax fees unaccounted for, illegally used by Bill Miles and the nonprofits like the Low Country Golf Association, which is a tax scam. Also controlled by Bill Miles. It's illegal to use tax money for private profit. $14 million in hospitality taxes disappeared, unaccounted for, says used for bond debt reduction. $11.5 million used by the Chamber DMO illegally, no accounting, no audits, fraudulent Chamber contract drafted by crooked lawyers Halford, Coltrane, and Finger and Bluffton. Legal fees, including all fees illegally and criminally used by lawyer Greg Alford and Kim Likens, Coltrane's former law partner. $600,000 used issued to Seapines for dredging of Harbortown. You can't use public funds for private use. Millions in hurricane supplemental funds just handed to Bill Miles' chamber with zero accounting. Miles said his tax use is his secret sauce and no one on council's business, including taxpayers. That's insanity. This budget is allowing illegal funding to the chamber and illegal funding to nonprofits that don't qualify under ATAX laws, plus over $1 million taken to Canada by Bill Miles, Mark Orlando's home country. This town council and chamber are also in violations of many state and federal laws caused by this illegal tax use. Lastly, Mr. Perry, you said you saw 80% of the chamber receipts and invoices when nobody else could. We want 100%. I contend you lied, you committed financial fraud, you need to resign, or you need to be removed as mayor. I also believe you're at risk by losing your job as a mortgage broker. We need a mandatory forensic audit. We need FOIA compliance. We need the FBI help. We need to follow the money. Orlando, CPA Troyer, lawyers, Bill Miles, they all need to be investigated. Our town is in a real legal transparency crisis. We need a council transparency pledge. We just don't need a civility pledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland. Today, do we have anybody else?
Certainly, yes, sir. Lastly, we have Lynn Greeley.
Lynn Greeley could not be here today. I'm going to hand you the POA.
Mr. Hoagland, that doesn't go to me, and as stated in the past, we do not accept the power of attorney. If you do speak, you will be in violation of our code, and you will be substituted.
I think you'll be in violation of the First Amendment, Mrs. Greeley. POA?
No, sir.
We'll argue that in court.
No, sir.
We'll argue that in court, no problem.
You will face the fine.
No problem. So there's two articles from the Island Packet. Hilton Head's legal fees keep going up. How much is too much? Hilton Head's outside legal fees outpace Charleston and Myrtle Beach, and you're paying for it. We have an invoice from the Columbia-based McNair Law Firm, now Borough Foreman, which was hired by the town of Hilton Head regarding town manager Steve Riley's employment situation. Also, Chamber Bill Miles Law Firm, and only lawyers on the Chamber board. For now, there are no trained outside eyes looking to see whether the town of Hilton Head is properly spending hundreds of thousands of tax dollars annually on these outside law firms. But better oversight is needed, says a Florida professor and a longtime Charleston lawyer who sues lawyers for malpractice on behalf of his clients. Since fiscal 2013, much worse now, Hilton Head has paid a collective $2.4 million to 11 law firms, including more than $2 million to 3 present or former firms connected to the town's main outside attorney, Greg Alford, note Curtis Coltrane's former law partner, according to town records provided by the Packet and the Gazette. Records show that for the last 5 fiscal years, the town increased its annual spending on outside law firms from $331,000 in 2013 to $778,000 last fiscal year. At the same time, the town was draining its reserves to recover from one of the worst hurricanes in decades. When compared to South Carolina's largest city, Charleston, the two similarly sized cities, Myrtle Beach and Spartanburg, Hilton has spent more on outside legal fees in those recent fiscal years. The fiscal years run from July 1 to June 30. And the $2.4 million tab for Hilton Head taxpayers doesn't include the annual salary for the town's in-house staff attorney and now crooked lawyer Coltrane, who drafted the DMO contract with Finger. I'm shocked, said Town Council Mark Grant, who was told of the findings by the Packet Gazette. I think we need to look at this. We need to be physically responsible with our money. And why did this council just hand Bill Miles $350,000 more last month when Bill Miles told all of you he will not show you where he spent that money, but you give him $350,000? And he tells you, go to the opposite of heaven. I don't like profanity, so I'll just say go to the opposite of heaven, and you know what that means. This council is violating the fiduciary responsibilities and allowing these crooked town employees to run the show. This must end. These are old articles. We need to see all the legal fees of recent. Numbers don't lie, lawyers lie. Reagan principle, trust but verify. Thank you very much.
There, do we have anybody else signed up to speak?
No, sir, that concludes appearance by citizens.
Thank you very much. So at this time, Mr. Orlando, I will turn it over to you to do the second day of the workshop, going over the remaining portions of the budget.
Thank you, Mayor. Afternoon, council members, community. Have with me at the table Sean Colin, Brian McElwee, and Jen Ray, along with our finance director. Jen, of course, runs our capital improvement program. Sean's the director of the department, and Brian McElwee is the assistant director. Brian has oversight of facilities, including capital projects with Jen. So welcome, welcome. So today, yes, we talked about the other 5 funds, right? General, stormwater, debt, Gullah Geechee, historic neighborhoods, CDC, as well as housing a couple of days ago. Today, we are here to talk about capital projects. There we go. Our capital projects account for and report the financial resources, the restricted funds and committed for expenditures for capital outlay, right? So there's projects, it's either land acquisition, construction of capital facilities, and other assets. Projects are primarily non-recurring in nature. And so state law requires us to have a 5-year capital improvement program. We have that 5-year program, but we look at the budget annually as a year 1 spend, but know that the program's always a 5-year rolling fund. All capital categories require a unit cost threshold of greater than $5,000, so those things under aren't in the capital plan, they're in the operating budget for the most part, except roads, buildings, computer software, that threshold is $50,000. So maintenance dollars, for the most part, would be in your operating budget. These other capital projects over 50K are in the capital program. Various sources of funds, including beach fees, state aid tax, hospitality fees, grants, TIF dollars, things like that. So there's a process. We don't just come up with the projects on the fly. We review our capital, our prior year projects to carry forward. So as the projects are live, we know that most projects, if any, in this day and age, don't have a 12-month schedule. That was not a Freudian slip. We consider internal lists, right? So I'll have some opinions on what I believe should be good projects. You also will, community will. Pickleball as an example, we'll hear about it. We'll put it on our potential list. We'll balance the funding availability and staffing to manage those projects. We bring our park-related projects, Parks and Rec Commission, and our Capital Improvement Program Committee talk about it, and then we bring all of that work to Planning Commission, and those Planning Commission members have an important role, and that role is to give us feedback and help us prioritize the project. So as a staff, we will suggest priorities. Planning Commission, in turn, makes that recommendation to you as a town council, what those priorities are, and it's your responsibility to make those final decisions. So town council review and decision. And that all, of course, happens throughout the year, but as we lead up to budget, the town council review and decision. What's not jumping out at us on here is we've also talked about capital projects throughout the year, and most recently at our strategic plan workshop in January. So the various funding sources, exciting to see the various funds. You see the fund sources on the left side. You see what the actual was in 22, 23, what our 24 proposed budget is, and then we can see some percent changes, both value-wise, percent-wise, and then the far right column is what percent of our budget is supported by these revenues. So we can see all the various sources, and I won't go through every source, but we have a capital improvement program proposed budget of $39,993,081. Major sources of revenue, H-tax, sale of land we used, beach preservation fee, those transfers in, so the same exercise that we talked about in general fund. as well as consolidated overall budget, the transfers in that I mentioned a couple days ago, you see them really showing up here. So beach preservation fees, 6.5, hospitality fees transferred in 2.3, TIF dollars, 4.3, state aid tax, 3 million, road usage fee, 3.6, electric franchise, 7.7, almost 7.8, and then of course stormwater utility fee, and those utility fees go towards those stormwater utility dollars. So what this shows is a real diverse use, or I should say source of funds. There's no one fund other than really H or A overloaded in the program. And so we're taking a lot of those dollars and we're pledging them to different programs. So we manage our capital program over the last couple years. We've made some shifts and we're starting to look at, I would say, portfolios of work, and those portfolios of work are showing up on your left column. Our beaches, our pathways, our roadways, our parks, our facilities, that includes equipment, our fleet, that includes fire trucks, and land acquisition. And of course, you saw the definition, land acquisition is part of your CIP, so we do keep some funds in the CIP for the soft cost land acquisition. That is not to mean that those dollars are for land acquisition. Those land acquisition dollars, when you need them, come from different fund balances. Real estate transfer fee, a tax as two examples. And then housing, you see, as it was an account in portfolio last year, but because this year we created a new housing fund, you see that it's removed. So you see that a $39.9 million budget, it's down $5.6 million from last year. I was asked a question a couple, maybe 2, 3 different times. Why are we reducing our CIP, and especially why are we reducing it in roads and parks where we need it the most? Well, it's not an overall reduction. It just means that this year, I would say more than ever in the last 2 budgets, at least for me, I think that this is a very practical, very deliberate use of showing a use of funds. So last year, 45.6 million, we were putting placeholders in these various accounts, and we knew that we would not be able to build $45.6 million, but we got some projects started. So we spent some dollars last year leading into this year, and then this year we're pledging to either be well underway with design and permitting, and or design, permitting, and construction. And for the most part, those construction accounts, the construction dollars, those contracts need to be set this year. So that's what would make up that $39.9 million. And you can see the spread, the pie chart here, sorry. So our projects, you see our park program, 22.8% of our budget, our fleet, 20.8, facilities, 16.4, and so on and so forth, and how it breaks out. I mentioned this at first reading. Our projects are well diversified around our island. Excuse my wrist. They're in every area. You see the pin drops on that, and those make up our beach, pathways, roads, parks, and facilities. Investments. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do today is dive into each account, so to speak. So beach, pathway, roadway, park, facility, fleet, and land is self-explanatory. But for those major programs where we intend to invest this year, we're going to go over those projects at a high level as well as a spending level. So please jump in, and Mayor, defer to you and council, but stop me as I go with council questions.
I think as we did it on Tuesday would be appropriate to do again today.
Okay, and I have my team with me. By no means am I well-versed in every single detail of this project. I rely heavily upon Sean and Brian. Brian's aware that we might call on him today. And with Jen's help. So It's been great. We've prepared. Sorry, Brian. I'll pay for this later, everybody. So,
While they're sharing a microphone, I can see that over there.
We're not getting into resiliency today.
thank you. So our beach program, it's exciting. I think that over the last 2 years, we've seen some significant investments. I'll say first and foremost, an ADA overlook, a barrier-free accessibility to beach access, and so we're proud of that. We've also put many MOBA mats in for those wheelchair and ADA and mobility, those folks that need some assistance with mobility. Even me just pulling a wagon with my children, it's made it all a lot easier. So the goal is the maintenance and general improvements to 7 beach parks, paving, landscaping, lighting, signage, our ongoing activities to manage our beach, including endangered species monitoring, activities related to the next renourishment. So that is our major lift getting ready for a fiscal year 25 beach renourishment. And so this is the year that we're planning and permitting and strategizing on that. Design, permitting, and construction starts of improvements definitely at Islanders Beach Park and other parks along the way. That's our major lift there at the beaches. And then replacement of existing boardwalks at Dreesen and Folly. You could see the project highlights in the program. So a $4.5 million program for beach management, beach renourishment permitting, beach park maintenance, Dreesen Beach Park, Boardwalk, Fish Hall Beach Park. I took a recent visit to Fish Hall, I should say, and there's some needed improvements down there, bathrooms, bike racks, trash containers, plantings, and just real, I call it livability improvements. Folly Field, Beach Park Boardwalk, and Islanders Beach Park. You recently adopted the Islanders Beach Park Master Plan. We talked a lot about the plan itself. We talked a lot about access to the site. We talked a lot about parking. We talked a lot about the program. And so I'd say that planning and design and programming is underway. Your approval of that master plan gives us confidence now to go spend those dollars on the final design, the engineering and architecture and whatever design we need, as well as permitting and construction. So I apologize. We've tried to do this 12 different ways to show all of this to you on the screen. By no means are we going to try to squint, but you, through my highlights, we can see where those dollars are. You also have in front of you an 11 by 17. We can hand this out to the public as well. But as we get through this, there's a few columns that I think are important to look at. It's the adopted amended budget that we have, funds currently available, carry forward funds, new funds, and a total fund for each account. You can see that the program dollars are in there, and by no means do we need to go through every single line item on here, but those dollars that are applied to that, beach management and monitoring, beach renourishment, and then you see beach park maintenance, Dreesen, Fish Hall, Coligny Beach Park parking, that's on there. That's just from last year, so it's a carry forward. And then Harbor Town dredge funds, and then the beach park management and compliance total accounting. So what I'll do is pause on each one and see if town council has any questions. As a next steps, I would like to get through fiscal year 24 budget with you. And upon adoption, we go back together as a strategic plan update in most likely July through a workshop where we talk big picture about that 5-year CIP program again. So, questions on beaches? Advice, direction, support?
Betsy?
Yes, thanks very much for pausing on each of these sheets. And as an example, because a lot of my constituents care about Islanders Beach Park, and we recently approved, as you call it, the master plan, if you will, the schematic. So the next step, as I understand it, and folks at home can blow it up on their screen, But it will have final design, which takes more than a schematic, a nice, pretty drawing. You've got to get to construction plans, if you will, or you can get to permitting. So all that's going to occur during fiscal year 23-24 with anticipated construction, if I'm reading this right, starting construction during fiscal year 23-24 and finishing in 24-25.
Yes.
So that's what's to be anticipated. Probably not a lot during the summer months for instance, Islanders Beach Park, with a lot of construction disruption during the summer season, I'm guessing. But I think it would be helpful to at least take that example.
Yes.
And kind of go through this chart. So was there did I misinterpret any kind of planning in that or timeline for that?
No, I'll jump in and then defer to Brian and Jen and team. So you approved the master plan, and so I kind of look at it and say, well, we have a 13 and a half month year because we're getting started right now. And so the next step is true design, right, through engineering, civil, survey, really getting that off, that extra parking lot we added in there. That's just not an easy, on the master plan it looks great, but we've got to make sure the turn radiuses make sense. We're really surveying the trees to really understand impacts to existing trees to save some parking, as well as a turnaround, right? If you really look at that, you've got to get that geometry of the turnaround right. It's got to be placed right and function right. But so there's that work, and that would always take, in a good year, 4 to 5 months when you're talking to civil. And then a land disturbance permit takes about 4 months as well from different agencies, not ourselves. And so we just added up right there about 9 months of work. Then we would have to bid a contract for real pricing, and then we're also going to make some logistical decisions, strategically to figure out what's first, second, third, and 10th as we construct, right? So parking, playground, improvement to the building, improvement to the ADA ramp, stormwater improvements, bike racks, pathways, and all those different variables down there. And so we'll be planning that along the way, but the true planning of it and the permitting of it, it's 8-9 months, and that's not slow. That's private sector takes that long as well. We are going to look at different ways we can expedite those contracts, whether we bifurcate parking different than building and playground, right? Or if we just do one contract as a design build and try to work through the economies of scale with one contractor and one contract of accountability. TBD. But it's 8-9 months to figure it out and then try to be live under construction after we bid out construction for at least 30 days, review contracts, get the best price, make sure the quality is important in the pricing, and go from there.
Thinking about, as we always do, seasonal timing as far as construction goes. So
Of course.
I think that's helpful because we're going to see a lot of projects in similar status for this fiscal year in the design and moving towards permitting before actually we see shovels in the ground, equipment on site. So thank you.
Jen, did I miss anything?
No, that's exactly right. And if I could just piggyback on that, on your comments, Mr. Manager and Ms. Bryson, hit on the seasonality, especially at the beaches. And you'll notice on these charts, we started preparing this in February based on what was anticipated to be complete or not. And sometimes due to getting the permits or bidding or all those factors Mark just mentioned, something may not come up in the right season for the beach. So if it says completed, but yet we showed it as a highlight, that'll be an adjustment that we make from a budget standpoint. But trying to sequence Folly Field boardwalk being closed, Dreesen boardwalk being closed, improvements at Islanders. We don't want to have all of our beaches, underway at the same time, and then that window is really mid-September, October to earlier and earlier every year. Easter, is kind of our drop dead. So sequencing that out, and Mark hit on a couple of the techniques that we're trying to do, and I think this is just, if it's okay, for all of our capital projects, we have been really focusing on some different strategies that we can employ in this coming year to be able to advance these projects that are good for our community, our residents, our visitors. And so whether it's a design build or having more contractors on board, having more project managers, how we can start one piece while we design something and go together, I think is really going to allow us this year to have you see more come up out of the ground and for us all to be able to celebrate the excitement of this program. It feels daunting at times, and like our team hears, sometimes like how are we going to do $39 million? But gosh, what a joyful challenge to have. Compared to a community where we might build a sidewalk or two and paint a fence and put up a new sign. We have a lot of projects that are going to make a difference for our community, and appreciate your support, and everyone here as we strategize through there. The other comment is some things we're calling out as a highlight just to bring your attention to it, and it might not show up as a line on the spreadsheet, and I'll mention Fish Hall is one. We know from a recent visit, we identified some things that could be done out there, but it, on your big spreadsheet, falls under beach park improvements. So there are 7 beach parks, and that one's not called out as a specific, but that's where that funding, to do those improvements would happen. So just a little clarification. That'll happen throughout the program because, as Mark says, we've built it as a program, and there's some specifics and then some places that give us the flexibility as we identify things throughout the year that become important to the community, to town council, to leadership, that we can take those on and prioritize them.
Have any other general comments?
Sorry, just one quick thank you for the dashboard on the website to keep us all updated as to what's going on with different capital projects.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that based off of your question and then what your response is about it being a normal time frame, that you can keep up with the progress on the dashboard to make certain that things are moving forward so you know where we stand. So.
Great, thank you. All right, so in a nutshell, beach management monitoring, permitting for beach renourishment, some beach park improvements. Fish Hall's a great example. Dreesen Beach Park boardwalk replacement. Fish Hall Beach Park improvements, Folly Field Beach Park boardwalk replacement, and then Islanders Beach, the design, permitting, and beginning construction. So, exciting year. Most importantly on that we will have our eyes on. It's always great to improve beach parks, beach renourishment.
Mark, with all these projects, do any of these come back to council at some point, or do you have a green light to move forward based on commitments already made?
On these projects, sir, on the screen, I have the commitment already. Your policy decision was made for Islanders Beach Park, the design and master plan. Yes, sir. Pathways. So I told the team this morning, this helped me a little bit because, all right, we have 7 beach parks. So what are we really managing this year from a facility standpoint as well as the capital investment standpoint? We have 7 beach parks. We have 65 miles of public pathways, right? And so our goal here is to incrementally continue to improve those pathways and also add new segments in areas that are in desperate need of connectivity. So as we improve island non-vehicular mobility, our focus is on the maintenance and general improvements, repairing, striping, different safety enhancements, different experience enhancements, and consistency and uniformity. It's the one viewpoint I have on the island is nothing is done twice in a row, and a lot of our striping patterns, a lot of our signage patterns. And so getting that to a point of consistency, please know this, my big push with our CIP team this year is to provide that consistency. Where stop signs belong on pathways, where stop bars belong, where signage belongs, whatever standard we are applying, it needs to be consistent by the end of this year. And then constructing new pathways and preliminary planning, design, and permitting of future pathways. Some projects are ready to go and others need some careful attention. Projects identified based on collaboration with Bike Walk Hilton Head Island, thank you. Bike ambassadors, thank you. Our capital project division staff, thank you. And they're doing a pathway assessment twice a year. So some investment, our $4.8 million investment this year as planned, show up under project highlights. Pathway maintenance improvements, I'll ask Jen to clarify in a sec. New pathway, Shelter Cove Lane construction. New pathway, Woodhaven Lane construction. William Hilton Parkway eastbound from Singleton Beach Road to Shelter Cove Lane, the design, permitting, and construction. New pathway, Jonesville Road, design, permitting, and acquisition. New pathway, William Hilton Parkway eastbound, Wexford to Arrow Road, permitting, acquisition, and construction. Dunnigan's Alley, design, permitting, and acquisition. And then Cordillo at Pope, design, permitting, and construction. And that Cordillo Parkway at Pope, that's a small little segment that we've realized absolutely needs to connect as the bank, the old Bank of America, the bank, the business comes online to make sure that those folks in and out of Shipyard aren't traveling in the middle of the street in that area. It's pretty dangerous. Jen, did we miss here a question? Sorry. William Parkway, eastbound, Singleton to Shelter Cove. Did we already acquire, or should that be in here? Just a question. It's okay if it is.
I believe the part that we're talking about doing the construction is the part that is town-owned.
Okay.
There might be one parcel there that needs to be acquired.
Okay.
That is part of a larger project that would go all the way to Matthews Folly Field as the next piece, but there would be significantly more acquisition in that parcel.
And as part of that, we need to start thinking through the bigger picture, right? Not just building that parkway or that pathway segment. So how this looks on here, and again, I'll apologize the whole meeting, trying to enlarge this and show it to you all is a tough to do. You have it in front of you. The community has access to it. We're here to talk today about the segments. The source of funds are hospitality tax, mostly, some state aid tax, mostly, for those projects. Questions? Sir?
A couple of comments on pathways. One of the things in this list, far out, 2075 or 2000, 2100 or something, is a pathway around Sea Pine Circle. We have occasional tourists who have no idea how to get through that circle, and it's extremely dangerous. I'd like to suggest for consideration that instead of having a way far out project to create a new pathway, that for openers, we just do signs about how to get around the circle, because there are pathways that will permit that. And after we deal with the traffic problems on Sea Pine Circle sometime later this year and implementation, the circle may look different anyway, but it would be much less expensive and deal currently with the danger of tourists wandering into the circle on their bikes. So I would not have that project in the list. If we need to bring it up again later, fine, but I certainly think we need to have signs. There is another place on Pope Avenue, the new bank, formerly Bank of America, where the exit there on the pathways was dangerous when the bank was there, and I hope that will be looked at in connection with the development of the new facility there.
Yeah. Jennifer, if council were to support striving to be a platinum level bike community, do these projects fall in line for that goal, or are there others and perhaps significant other investments that we would have to contemplate to get to that place?
That's a really, really good question, and there's a lot more that goes into being platinum or even gold like we are now, besides just the pathways that we're building. And so some of the things that we've done in building our partnership with Bike Walk, Hilton Head, and the ambassadors is helping us get toward platinum. Being able to do these pathway assessments and work with C-Click Fix and Cartograph and facilities to identify improvements and do that safety stuff, that's helping us get toward platinum. So I don't know that there are specific projects on the ground that would need to be built that would necessarily tip that, but rather it's a lot, it's the holistic pathway program.
I like the idea of the town being perceived as the best of a class, so that I would be supporting going in that direction. I think council just needs to decide, put it in a committee, whatever.
Any other?
First of all, I appreciate that we have opportunity for other input. Bike Walk, as you know, I was on the board before being elected to town council, so I'm glad, and I think it'd be helpful to put that in the chart that we have about input along the way. As Parks and Recreation Commission, a formerly appointed commission, provides input in the CIP, I think it'd be good to include Bike Walk, especially on the pathways and even the roadway enhancements because of that. The other thing that I think it's important to talk about, and that is we have our corridor plan in the works, and what other kind of improvements might be recommended or adopted in that plan might mean some changes during even this fiscal year to address some of those needs, especially with regard to safe crossings. Because when I look at the CIP, again, some of my number one priorities are where are we making safety improvements? And I know a lot of the pathway improvements are safety improvements. And then I also look for how does this help us move towards a complete streets policy? Because what are we doing with regard to our capital projects to address not just vehicular traffic, but bicyclists and pedestrian traffic? And I think a lot of these are moving towards that as well. The other thing is, I concur with the challenge with getting around Sea Pine Circle and finding folks trying to figure out how to do that. And thinking of other places, particularly Arrow Road, where I know there was an accident not long ago between a vehicle and a bicyclist. Fortunately, the bicyclist wasn't injured. The bicycle, however, was totaled. And that was at Target Road. And there is a safe pathway along the power line right-of-way, but then the connection, and sometimes folks need a little direction. And having just participated in pedal, bless you.
Thank you.
Having just participated in pedal, it was helpful to see signs occasionally where you made turns, which leads me to, sorry, Mayor, I'll go off a little bit on a tangent here. But I think as we think about markings on our pathways, it might be good if somebody's trying to, for instance, do a 20-mile loop, on our kiosk signs or something, have like a purple line or something that says 20-mile loop, so that someone can follow the turns. You get to an intersection, and if I'm on the purple mile route, I turn left here, or I go straight. So just an idea to include in those kind of pathway enhancements. But with regard to the funding, I'm very happy to see this amount of funding go towards pathway improvements, and I think it will help us to continue to be a bicycle-friendly community. And I appreciate that we're going to become more standard in our signage and our markings, and to renew those, because there are a lot of places where they're faded or indistinguishable. And I hope that, I don't know how this list compares to all the number one rankings that Planning Commission made of these projects. I know Bike Walk sent maybe some others, and some of those were designated number one, and some of them were ranked. But I trust that you've made an analysis of that.
I have a question or a comment, if I might. I am very troubled by the DOT pathways that are immediately adjacent to the roadways. Going down 278, there are some very dangerous sections there people going against the line of traffic, that would be a fatality for sure. So I think that we ought to be looking at those pathways. So a number of those are adjacent to town-owned land, so we wouldn't even have to acquire more property, just close a pathway there and make it safer. Thank you.
One more comment, if I may. I am happy to see that you've got a biennial inspection of pathways. There, it just seems to be a continual need for maintenance. It would be nice if you could find ways to eliminate tree root intrusion, but absent that, there's a lot of bumps.
Sorry, Mayor, I've got one more. I'm really glad to see us moving towards pathways on both sides of 278 because that will take away some of those dangerous crossings. So all those extensions along the other side where a pathway doesn't exist, I really appreciate those.
So we're hearing everything. I see Josh over there typing as fast as he can type and taking great notes, so that's good stuff. Nothing I've heard, though, in the first two portfolios of investment are really changing our current CIP program, let alone adding different dollars to it. Roadways, improvements conducted, island roadways to maintain, improve, enhance our drive lanes, curb and gutter, pedestrian crosswalks, lighting, and corridor aesthetics. We brought you a little while ago I'd call it a corridor plan. It was a lot to digest in one workshop. It was a lot more than even I could comprehend getting ready for that workshop. When we're through budget and we start talking about the strategic plan update, we've mentioned to you, and I know Kim has polled town council to come back to you 2 different times at workshops, one in June, one in July. The June workshops will be some parks, Chaplain Crossings, and Rackets facility. And the July workshop will be these road segments. Mr. Stanford, the pathway that you mentioned on the road, I think the one that jumps out at me is through Chaplain. It's a sidewalk from years ago right next to the road that we blow off as much as we can so that your 4 feet is as unfettered as possible. It's time to move that back onto our property as a pathway. That pathway plan shows up there, but what isn't showing up in the pathway plan is there's some work to do within the DOT right-of-way to get all of that worked out, and that is part of the road segment workshop. So we will focus on a few different roads, one of which is Pope, the other's through Chaplain, and the other is through on William Hilton Parkway, really out in front of Home Goods and the Oaks and that dangerous spot in there. So that helps me dive into this section. So we're taking a look at crosswalks, not just road segments. We're taking a look at lighting and pedestrian safety and speed limits. We also have in this a dirt road paving program is something that we've prioritized significantly recently. We are in land acquisition mode for those dirt road pavings. They're private, unpaved drives with public access, right? And so we're looking at them to become public rights of way, including pavement, install of storm drainage infrastructure and maintenance. We're also looking at improvements based upon the draft major thoroughfare corridors plan, safety, beautification, and consistency. That word will come up a lot. Landscaping, signage, pavement. These mid-block crosswalks should be troubling to all of us at 45 posted speed, more than 45 actual speed. And installation and activation of the adaptive traffic signals at all signalized intersections on William Hilton Parkway, Pope, and Palmetto Bay Road. Simpler said, wherever you see a signal, there will be an adaptive signal, most likely by June. That's our project schedule. That is an all departments on deck job. It's not just a project manager and facilities or a part-time project manager that understands traffic. It's IT. Tom Sunday himself, as our IT director, is very involved, making sure that the wires connect and the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Brian's involved, Sean's involved, everyone's involved, and so that last item on that list is our highest priority right now, roadway-wise. Stay tuned for more. Some highlights this year: dirt road paving, Mitchellville Lane and Pine Field Road. Acquisition and construction is the goal this year. Dirt road paving program, Horse Sugar Lane, Alice Perry Drive, and Freddie's Way. Design, permitting, acquisition, and begin construction this year. So I think what you see there is that we will either be under construction or complete construction on those roads. And we want to look at those roads as one contract if we can, or perhaps even two contracts that help with our effectiveness of project delivery. Another Alfred Lane, permitting and acquisition. So William Hilton Parkway enhancements, Gateway Corridor, the plan we're talking about is a major policy decision on your end. We're going to ask you to, at some point, approve that plan so that we have the confidence to implement. Ditto, same process as the Islanders Beach Park. Once you have approved that plan, we have confidence to go out and implement, whether it's a facility improvement or a new capital project that we would still bring forward to you. So spot intersection improvements, Northridge, Palmetto Parkway safety improvements, design, permitting, and beginning construction, and then several pedestrian and vehicular enhancements. I mentioned the, sir?
I'm trying to get a little clarity here on the Gateway Corridor planning, which is the entire gateway, and then the Northridge, Palmetto Parkway safety improvements. Would that be considered a spot outside of the Gateway Corridor planning? And I'm bringing this to the attention of the entire council here, and by no means do I like the piecemeal. However, this piece has shown itself as a very ugly head in our community with the amount of deaths that we've seen. I'm just wondering if it could be pulled out and we deal with it in a very expeditious manner.
Yes.
With some kind of lighting or something in that area. It's very dark there. I've got several calls from folks that are driving that area saying, hey, I'm afraid that I may hit someone because it is so dark. So, that piece, I think, the statistics have shown that us being ignorant to it any longer is a liability.
Understood.
I'd like to support Mr. Brown's position there, given that there were 3 fatalities in that general area last year. It should be a high priority for getting something improved very quickly.
And I would like to add to that in purple and circle and with several asterisks on my sheet. I was going to ask about that. So.
Sir, the answer is yes. I'm going to ask Sean to elaborate on that because that is the plan, but I would like you to hear from the Director of Community Development directly on that.
Yeah, and I think that's the main reason we're here. We've got these general categories of projects that we're advancing as part of the corridors plan. We talked about systems, we'll talk about specific segments, but we've identified a handful of priority areas, that being one, the Northridge section. We will certainly advance that as a priority based on safety and the implications of what has happened there. And so we know coming out of this meeting and as you adopt the budget where the priorities lie, and we will not delay in advancing this as a priority item.
Yeah, I'd like to say one more thing about it. I'm sitting across from an engineer. I readily admit I'm not an engineer, but there's got to be some temporary solution we can work out with SEDOT because it's their road and their responsibility to fix that. But as a community, we have responsibility to draw attention to it and to do something. And if I have to go out there with a cart full of plants and plant them in that, temporarily in that concrete so that vehicles won't be where people are trying to cross, I mean, we've got to do something. We really do. Plans are great, but we got to do something.
We are? I'm moving on. Sorry, I was writing a note. Didn't write quick enough.
going to expose my sentimentality for old Hilton Head. And it's really meant to put something on the table for my associates. Mitchellville Lane is probably quintessential as far as my history on Hilton Head. It's a dirt road, and I'm talking about just one section off of Fish Hall, a right-hand turn off of Fish Hall. There's a segment that must be 1,500 feet long, canopy of oaks, ditches on either side, only one house on this stray piece of roadway. From my standpoint, we ought to preserve that one section of dirt road on Hilton Head so that forever people will understand the scale of what roadways used to be, the canopy, the ditch, and so on. It's just an opportunity for Hilton Head to be appreciated in more than one period of time. So, having said that, I would encourage council to drive out there, and whatever council decides is fine with me.
Makes sense. Makes sense, Brian? Okay.
Just follow up. David, I appreciate your comments because you're right. I do know that area and it is absolutely stunning, and everyone should experience it. But I don't want to preserve just one street in one area as a remembrance of Hilton Head and its past. That concept should be actually employed at every single decision-making turn that we make, and every effort to preserve Hilton Head, its past, that we all value, that brought us here, that's kept us here, that keeps bringing people here, should be preserved. So, absolutely, but that's not the limit. That should be the starting point of every decision made.
I was just raising the question whether or not that $647,000 is our highest priority.
Just so that we're not confused, Councilman Ames, I think the portion of Mitchellville Lane that is being considered is not
Is
what
it
you're
the
talking
other
about.
end?
Yes,
Only that end, not the whole thing?
yes, if I'm sure about that, I'm pretty sure.
Is that correct, Brian?
I think a piece of what Mr. Ames is talking about probably has some deed discussions and confusion there at the moment. And I would just add that if that is the desire of council to keep that area as it is presently, then we better get on move on with collecting that green space dollars, because there's a lot of activity going on in that road. There are discussions as we speak about land sales in that area for development.
Point well taken.
Okay.
I would just expand on it. We don't have to wait, if that's true, Alex, because I'd like to see it preserved. We have money and we are buying land. And when we buy land through our land acquisition process, we should be buying it for conservation and preservation of land and not just workforce housing.
A couple more projects, page 2 of this, adaptive traffic signal we talked about. That project will not be turned on, so to speak, in phases. So we are going to have all of the technology in at all of the intersections, at every signal, so 4 cameras on per each intersection, and we'll have to test it, and we'll have to make sure it works. It's not just a matter of installing and putting in some fiber, putting in the camera, connecting it to the supercomputer and turning it on. It needs to be calibrated. We've got to be very careful in how we do that. We are working with the county closely on that, as well as the state, but definitely the heavy lift is on us. And that's why I say that is our high priority project right now. Pope Avenue streetscape enhancements, that will be brought back to you. Main Street, we are very close to acquiring all of it, but this year will be a big lift, design permitting, Squire, Pope, road, crosswalk design, roadway maintenance improvements, signal maintenance, and wayfinding and signage master plan. Mr. Alfred, what you asked about a little earlier with the Sea Pine signage, I think that that can bake itself into there, and we agree with you. We'll prioritize that part of it. So it's more of the same, what I've done here, so we can all see it, but this presentation, as soon as we're done today, will be live and well on our main website in the budget area, in the budget section. So those are the projects, the sources of funds for our roadway projects. A total of $6.2 million on roads. We're using our Hilton Head Island traffic impact fee, road usage fee, electric franchise fee for those projects. Next are parks.
Quick thing about Main Street, once again, that's in an area where I respond to constituents. I think folks recognize that we're still trying to complete the acquisition, but according to the chart I'm looking at, again, as we talked about before, once that acquisition is complete, design and then doing the construction drawings takes a while, getting the permits takes a while. So it looks as though construction is planned for FY '25 and '26. So it's, much as we'd like to have anything on this list fixed right away, the realization is that it's going to take a little bit more time before we see something happen.
I think we're going to have that at one of our, we're going to have a full report on that at one of our next council meetings.
Great, great, thank you.
Well, and just to clarify, there would be spot, repair work that can be done once we own it. This project is speaking to the larger addition of pathways and lighting and how we make that a true complete street or improve that corridor rather than just fixing, the potholes.
Great, thanks very much. Thanks, Mayor.
Parks. Maintenance and general improvements to existing parks, playground equipment, replacement, landscaping, lighting, site furnishings. This one good example, this great playground in the sand at Jarvis Park. I think it's time, and we have some dollars. We're also seeking and have been looking for some grant dollars to make some improvements. Playground equipment, landscape lighting, site furnishings. Design and permitting of improvements at Mid-Island Tract Park, still named TBD. Chaplin Community Park, Crossings Park, Chaplin Linear Park. Construction of Patterson Family Property and Taylor Family Property Parks. Island Rec, their capital project requests include improvements to the building, pool and grounds, and some special events, and then projects identified based upon collaboration with the Parks and Rec Commission and the Island Rec Association. A $9.1 million investment intended this year, Mid-Island Tract, and I'm going to go through these and we can talk about scope. Design permitting of phase 1. A little different than we first said last year. Phase 1 will include stormwater, pathways, a restroom or two, some signage, and some parking. But as an example, there's some dry ditches out there. Ditches after the rain falls shouldn't be dry, so we know that there's some stormwater issues as we start talking about resiliency and we start talking about water quality in that, especially in that sub-watershed area there. I think it's important that we look at the water filtration and capture at Mid-Island as phase 1. Chaplin Community Park, we will come back to you.
Mark, can I ask you about Mid-Island?
Sure.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
I want to be sure that I understand. The budget for '24 for Mid-Island includes the infrastructure that you're referring to, but also will improve some safety improvements as well as a bathroom and a better parking facility so that citizens can begin to use the property more safely. Is that correct?
Yes, we need to. They're out there. They're out there. All right, and there's a couple bathrooms out there already. It's just a matter of fixing them up and seeing what that looks like. That's not the priority in this budget other than phase 1. So
Construction starting in fiscal year '25. That's not until July 1st.
right.
So I think what our expectations are in the community need to be understood. My reaction is, from a land development standpoint, at the very least, we ought to send out a hi-ho and clean out the ditches so that we get the drainage that we need, and that doesn't take a lot of brain power.
Correct. And that, sir, to clarify and reiterate, that is the scope of phase 1. Am I missing anything, Brian, John, Jen? Okay. Chaplain Community Park renovation. So we brought to you some time ago the master plan. We were excited about the master plan, but by no means did we bring you what we thought was a finished product. At the public workshop, we heard keep our tennis courts. We heard put some pickleball in. We heard that there's an opportunity for elements on the plan that aren't yet on there, one of which is a pool. We have been taking a look at those suggestions. We will bring those back to you in June, and we will ask you for some more definitive direction to us. I know that Jen and team have been hard at work trying to make sense of making sure things fit, right? We don't want to put too much in one place, and everything for everybody isn't the solution at Chaplain. It's definitely a family-oriented park. It definitely is a connection to our beach, and as well, there's lots of kids there even tomorrow playing soccer, and so there's a bit of a mixture of use over there. So we'll be back to you in the middle of June with Chaplain crossings as well as the Rackets facility.
That's the June 14th workshop?
Yes, the one we're trying to get on the books.
When you refer to Rackets facility, you're speaking with regard to pickleball. Because I bring it up because pickleball was part of that plan. And if there is any change planned for that, and I hear the discussion with regard to Adriana and how things could develop there, I don't want to lose sight that we've made a commitment here. So if we're changing it, then that park area with regard to pickleball rackets needs to be inserted as
Yes.
a priority. Just making
Yes,
sure
and it will.
said and yes, okay.
It will, and we don't have rackets on here because you haven't yet said that's your main priority. But as we rethink Chaplain or improve Chaplain, if pickleball is not the solution there, where is pickleball the solution? The rackets facility we were talking about primarily was for tennis. We talked to you out loud at strategic planning as well as workshop to show you those tennis facilities, and it might be on here, Jen, I might miss it. Is it on the list?
It's on the spreadsheet in a out year. It's planning is coming
All
out
right.
of the Chaplain.
But I think we have
Our
some
project.
decisions to make, because the sooner we make the decisions, the quicker we can get on with the logistics and the strategies on how to implement. But I would say what we're trying to balance right now are a lot of amazing opportunities, right? There's tennis, there's pickleball, there's baseball, there's soccer, and I think that if we move one and take one away, it's got to shift somebody somewhere else. Know that we're working on that. We have to talk about that at workshop. It's hard to talk about it at budget, in my opinion. But I know that Chaplain Community Park needs some decisions made by you. If you make the decision and prioritize recreation over one piece of recreation over something else, then we've got to go find where the other one works. And so we're working on that puzzle piece right now.
I just want to make sure that we are keeping our eye on the pickleball and moving that forward in one way or the other. And right now, the plan that was presented was Chaplain. And so I think we owe that to the folks who have been at our meetings, raising their own funds, frankly, in the past to help even. And we cannot lose sight of it as things may or may not shift in the coming weeks and months.
I just want to say to that when we had some plans presented regarding pickleball 24 courts, it was never said not to do it. It's always been a part of the conversation, still is a part of the conversation. So it hasn't gone away. So I don't want anybody, in regards to pickleball, think that it's gone away. So just because it doesn't specifically say it here, it's still very much out there.
I think we need to clarify also, that the town does not own Adriana at this point. So can't go out there and repair those courts or build new courts. But negotiations are underway and close to a deal with the county where we do a land swap, and we'll be able to do those things.
Yes, sir. I must have been reading your mind. I'll ask Josh again. Where are we with the DOT on the land swap?
For the county.
We're a holdup in the land swap. We're working directly with the county and the town attorney in order to set a closing date for the transfer of the properties.
And Mr. Manager, if I could jump in just for 1 second, that's part of the discussion. So the rackets, the concept about the rackets park was brought forward along with Chaplin because we thought we might be displacing tennis. So we need to make sure we look at the whole program for recreation facilities. And as more options come online, like Old Schoolhouse Park at Adriana Lane, and some even other ones that we may have available, we're trying to make sure that we're accommodating these key priorities. Pickleball is absolutely in our crosshairs and is a priority in our program. It's just finalizing the decision on where it is and how many we build. But we'll bring forward those options to you for discussion and direction. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, along that same line of thought, once the transfer of ownership happens, I guess the real question from the community that we could be able to answer to give confidence is, once we have ownership, we could very easily expedite the build of courts at Adriana. If that takes a budget amendment, or we could use existing funds to get that moving, I think the community needs to know out loud that that is something that we can make happen fairly quickly.
Mayor, I was going to
Yes,
suggest perhaps a kind of a compromise here on how to approach this.
I think we're going to policy on that, and as we're talking about the budget.
No, this has to do with.
Okay.
I can tell you what line number here. It is PR 16 on the really big spreadsheet. So where it says under general park enhancements, Old Schoolhouse Park enhancements, which is the Adriana Lane property. We have $250,000 for fiscal year 23-24. Today it was mentioned perhaps $600,000 for if we did made improvements and added courts to Adriana. So my suggestion is we change that line item from Old Schoolhouse Park enhancements to pickleball enhancements. And we up the number to 600,000.
From where?
Yes, from PR 16 on my sheet.
Where were you pulling the 250?
Yeah, so you see where it says Old Schoolhouse Park enhancements?
Yes, ma'am, 250?
Change that to pickleball enhancements and increase the number from 250,000 to 600,000 as a placeholder and a sign of good faith. That's my suggestion.
Oh, I thought you told me where I could find the difference between 600 and
You got the
250.
350 in our pocket.
Yeah, that's right.
What project should I take it out of?
I would frankly take it out of the Mid-Island tract.
Mayor?
Yes.
Just saying.
I think we're getting into site planning. There's some issues that are red flags on committing significant dollars to Adriana that may, in the long run, not be a wise investment.
And that's why I suggested not naming the location, but calling it pickleball enhancements as a sign of good faith, because we have to adopt this budget before our next workshop to talk about Chaplin Park and before we consider other locations. So it's a placeholder, if you will, as we do have 1.5 million in debt service in case we do bonds during the coming year. So it is a placeholder and a sign of good faith. And I only threw out Mid-Island because
Right.
I said, where do I get the money from? And it's on the same sheet of paper. And it's got a big number.
I would say that we've got a master plan that has been presented, not adopted. We're having it come back again with $2 million for Chaplin. We've got $250,000 for the Adriana Park. So if we have to shift funds from one to another, then that could be done. So I don't know if it's necessarily changing the number, because we know that we have identified Chaplin Park previously as the home of pickleball. So therefore, there is a commitment there.
Right, okay. And I should add this, right? So the moving of the puzzle pieces is this. Adriana Lane is not ours yet. I've been working with you and Beaufort County, gosh, for more than a year. I remember being really excited when Mr. Greenway and I agreed to swap some land and make Barker Field our own. And frankly, at the time, I didn't quite know Old Schoolhouse Road. I was still a little new. There are 6 courts, I believe, at Adriana. It was a patch job. It was a very poor patch job. We'll own that. It's not our courts, though. To take 6, and I think it's important to say, I have full intention to bring pickleball. I hear you all. I hear the community forward. I'm going to ask you in the month or 2, in the months that come, to make some decisions on Chaplin, on Crossings, on pickleball, on soccer, on baseball, in some of these areas, because we are talking about future investment. We're not talking about right now. But Adriana Lane is difficult. Here's why. There's 6 courts. I don't know if you've been out there lately, but when we build extra, resurfacing courts is one thing, building more capacity in the Stony area while the DOT and the county and us are working on it with the Gullah Geechee corridor and expansion of recreation in an area that's not easily accessible. There's also this. There's no restroom out there. Restrooms will cost us a certain amount of dollars. There's no ADA parking space that's appropriate out there. So when we enhance those projects, it's one thing to say, yes, 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 we want it, but the project now takes a lot longer, right? Because I can't just double pickleball without more parking, let alone ADA, and I can't put more out there without a restroom. And so what I'd like to do is triage a little bit of Adriana and improve those courts that are there. By the time we get through that, we're going to work together on Chaplin and Crossings and a few of these other parks to know where the program is and where the program isn't as we balance all of this great recreation on our island. So
May I just make a comment?
that's where
Just real fast.
Yes.
I fully support pickleball, but also the plan for pickleball at Chaplin. And if we have more than one spot where we have pickleball opportunities across this island, all the much better. But Chaplin and pickleball and rackets sports there makes sense. And so
Thank you.
I just hear lots of other conversation, and I want to make sure it's somewhere, but Chaplin should be the.
It's there. I'm happy to talk about this today because I think it will pay dividends in our future. Mid-Island Tract Phase 1, we're ready to go. You've adopted a master plan. We know what Phase 1 will look like. There's $900,000 in the budget this year as a placeholder. Chaplin Community Park design, permitting, construction. If pickleball is included, that's your decision in the coming months. Workshop to scrub the details, followed up with town council, ask you to pass a resolution and your support to adopt the master plan. Ditto with Crossings. Are we or aren't we going to build a 400-foot baseball field? If we build a 400-foot baseball field, there's 4 fields. If we don't, as the plan that we presented to you recently, we'll have 5 fields. We're ready to go. Part of the Crossings Park renovation also includes the Bristol Sports Arena. It's time. Hockey rink is falling apart. Parking is old. The skate park, we could have a concrete bowl out there if we so choose. And so there's funds to do that. But the design, permitting, and beginning construction. Chaplin Linear Park, we talked about. Design and permitting. Patterson, design, permitting, construction. We have HUD money, CDBG funds in the wings, ready to spend. The sooner we make some final decisions on that and acquire or swap land with the property owners surrounding it, the better. Taylor Family Park, Barker Field, design, permitting, acquisitions in there as well. Ford's Shell Ring, preliminary planning, and then Island Rec projects. Capital projects, Bristol Sports Arena enhancements. Is Island Rec doing something with that?
No, that's just a carry.
Public art, and then general park enhancements, Green Shell, maintenance, Jarvis Creek Park, and then Old Schoolhouse pickleball. So good news is we have it in here a couple different times, a couple different ways. When we're through this, we will be back to you to have those master plans approved. We talk about phasing, and we're onward and upward. Questions? Facilities, improvements,
I want to make one one observation here. You're right, Mr. Manager, it's small, but I think I can read these out loud. I'm just looking at the bottom line when we're talking about this part of the program. And we've got about 5.3 million in carryover, and we're talking about almost 3.8 new money to get us to that 9-1 figure that we can see up here on the screen. But if you just inch over to FY '27, which is a reality of getting most of this done, the number there is 30 million. You won't get to that 30 million with the carryovers and the new money that we have outlined here. So I just bring that back to our attention as far as our capacity, as far as where we stand currently with our debt service situation. We've got a lot of work to do in this area that will absolutely enhance our community. We've got things falling apart that do not represent the excellence that we expect. So I just wanted to say that out loud. It's not a piece of the puzzle that's in the details. It's the reality of where we are.
Sir? Facilities and equipment, improvements, maintenance, security of town-owned or other facilities, buildings, properties, replacement and upgrades to our fire, medical systems and equipment, security cameras and connectivity at parks, including Fish Hall, Beach Park, Rowing and Sailing Center at Squire Pope Community Park, as well as public safety cameras, improvements to the Coastal Discovery Museum, capital projects to maintain the buildings and grounds, and also to support events, right? ADA improvements out there are necessary. Historic Mitchellville Freedom Park, we have that in here as a capital project under facilities and equipment. We know that it is in partnership or in conjunction through lease and agreements with the Historic Mitchellville leadership, but we have in our program improvements to the property, parking, ADA, and some of those improvements. So project highlights, we continue to make small but incremental investments here at Town Hall. I hope you recognize some improvements in accessibility and functionality of our building. Security system is in place, improvements exterior-wise as well. Fire rescue training center upgrades, Jarvis Pump Station roof replacement, DOT Toll Plaza building, the demolition. That project will move forward. You have at least gave agreement in principle to acquire or have that property received as a donation from DOT and then demo the building there. Electric vehicle charging stations at all of our town facilities. As we acquire new vehicles, as we can find them on state contract and acquire the vehicles cost effectively. We do have all electric vehicles, and so we will put charging stations, as we also require charging stations at every new commercial project. Parking master plan implementation. There's some policy there as well as project decisions to make. Emergency access gates, Coastal Discovery Museum I mentioned, and I mentioned Historic Mitchellville Freedom Park, including the Loop Road parking lot. IT equipment, security cameras, medical systems equipment replacement, fire hydrant expansion as we have in years past, and then several stormwater projects. I don't need to read them all. I've mentioned a lot of those projects in our stormwater utility fund the other night, and again, I mentioned that we transfer stormwater utility fees, the revenue, into the capital program with these projects as priorities. For a total investment in facilities and programming for $6.5 million. Fleet, we mentioned this last year, replacement of 5 staff vehicles. Oh, yes, sir.
Roll it, man, I like it.
Oh. Down.
That's okay, one thing. The security camera line item, we're trying to just round out our coverage at our parks. The one that I'm going to mention is not hours, but I think the need for security camera is absolute, and that is the landing in the Oakview area. The county manages that. I'm not suggesting that we pay to put something out there that the county should be taking care of, but it is within one of our neighborhoods. And I'm not quite sure if there's some way to work it out where that system can be monitored the same way that ours is monitored with the installation of a camera at that public site.
And I know you brought that to my attention. I know that Bob, our Director of Public Safety, has made sure that the rotation of Beaufort County, that it's on the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office rotation, and we'll share that same message on that camera in that regard.
Hang on, Mark. Got one more.
Mark,
Yes, sir.
did you say that town is now requiring commercial institutions to have electric car plug-ins?
New construction per our LMO.
I think for two reasons. Maybe we ought to consider at our more visited parks for some sort of a plug-in. The two reasons are practicality, but also brand reinforcement that we care.
Just so you know, when the rec center was done, we were required to put in the renovation, rebuild of that, to put in stations.
Parks and maybe the most utilized.
And as that comment and consideration has been discussed before, I've questioned, are these free? Are people paying for them? And how that will happen. And I think that's an important part of the conversation, as it's certainly wouldn't be, I think, the expectation that we would be paying for that service for others, at least not mine.
It's a policy decision, right? It's easy to put them in, but, do we charge? And we've done some research as we're putting them in a town hall. That question came up too. Are these for us or are these for the public? Especially because there's not a lot of places to charge your non-Tesla at Parker's at other stations, right? It's not as open. So as we put them in, we have that policy decision to make. It's not a huge cost. It's a little cost in comparison to everything else. But if we do move that, we'll put that on an agenda and talk to you at some point about the policy. Absolutely. Right?
Yeah, I wrote down policy decision for that part, so.
Yes, absolutely. Fleet, replacement of 5 staff vehicles that have reached 10, 12-year, way more than 100,000 mile marks. And one thing that I do look at pretty closely is if the car is in the shop more than it's on the road, and if it's unsafe to a degree on the road, we will change it out. But we don't just change vehicles out because they got old. We have a fleet manager. We maintain our vehicles very well through the fire department. It's tough to keep up to the repairs. If we can't, we have to outsource, and we have good places to go. But it's time for some vehicles as we bring new staff members in. If they can't use a pool vehicle, we'll purchase a vehicle. Our engine and pumper replacement and Quint Company replacement. That was a council decision in the past. Those dollars are in here as the lease. Replacement of 2 fire rescue staff vehicles, and then a new forklift. $8.3 million investment. Most of that, of course, is the engine and pumper and Quint Company replacement. Where's Chief? There he is.
We're leasing the new fire equipment.
Yes.
That's part of this $8 million number,
Carry the lease. You gotta carry the whole amount.
the whole amount of the lease.
Want to explain that, John?
An annual budget, that confuses me.
Sure. The purchase, the initial contract is in the capital plan for just that contract, and then the annual payments are in the operating budget.
Public accounting, you carry the full contract amount, and then you pay the debt on it. It's counting. And then land acquisition soft costs. We, self-explanatory, don't need to spend much time there. We know, though, that right-of-way acquisition as part of our road acquisition is part of this, too. We're focused here today. Fiscal year '24, beach program, pathway, roadway, park, facility, fleet, and land for a total of close to $40 million. We're excited. I remind myself what it would be like to build a $40 million building or a house. It's a heavy lift. I have a lot of faith in Jen. I've always, at least in my experience in my career, I know that great capital programs that I believe we've built as Scott passed, as we've rebuilt the program and got ready to renourish our beach and acquire right-of-way and invest in dirt roads and put pathways in and make policy decisions, you know, park master plans are policy decisions, understand the programming. That does take some time, and it is taking us some time. In one side of me, I wish we were going quicker, and the other side of me, I know that with the team and with council and community involved, there's a process. I trust the process. We've made some good decisions last fiscal with some master plans. I encourage this staff to be prepared at workshops. When we're in front of you, we need to ask you those questions. Do you want A or do you want B? So that we can make those decisions. But I'd say this year more than ever, the team's ready to build, right? We build stuff. That's our motto in the capital improvement program. You see the overall budget, 129 million, almost $130 million. We went over a lot of this at first reading, a lot of this at workshop. We had that first reading May 2nd, workshop May 9th. It does feel like a week ago, but it was 2 days ago. Today with the CIP program, we've got some work to do. We have some questions to answer, some public comment to get back to for a June 6th public hearing and second and final reading.
Okay, so now we'll go into general questions regarding the CIP.
Well, I'll just very quickly, once again, Mr. Orlando and the staff has done a very good job with putting together a CIP budget. It's easy to understand, easy to follow. I would just ask that as we move into the workshop and thereafter, we talked a little bit about your burn, Ms. Ray, like how much of it you are burning off. I think that's a good measurement that we can use moving forward. So as we go into workshop and as we start to give updates after that, I just appreciate that we put some focus around the burn of what we're spending. Okay.
Absolutely, and also how it ties back to our strategic plan and capital, including CAP program.
I would take it a little bit further than that, Alex. Also the burn rate of staff, mentality to and capacity. And I do challenge council on this is we've got a lot of things that we're putting in front of us for staff to address. We've got to be mindful of that as we start talking about other things that come around, because there's a gauge as to what can be handled on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And we want to make certain that we leave enough at the top for those emergency items that come around that have to be addressed. So I just want to make that comment that we need to be cognizant of that. So any other general comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Bryson.
Yes. Excuse me, Patsy.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm too am concerned about pressure on the staff. Seeing how ambitious this is justifies the additional staff that we're authorizing under this budget.
Yes,
So
sir.
I hope that we've allocated that around, because we don't want to see any of these folks burned out.
Correct.
And let's be careful about that, but let's go build it.
Thank you. May I comment on that? Because I
Yes.
think you need to hear this. Yes, it's taxing on staff. I would say right now, Jen, I'm not speaking for her, but it is. It's a lot. And I bring up that we're trying to build a $30-40 million home in 1 year. Do you know, we all can somewhat visualize what that value of that build is. Your appreciation for staff goes a long way. Your allowance of us hiring 2 new project managers, right? Jen didn't come to me and say, I need a whole bunch right now, because she knows that there's a lot of design and permitting and acquisition and real good project planning that needs to happen over the next 6 months. We are, as a team, going to get together soon after second and final reading of budget and pick and write down what are the 6 or 7 projects we're going to work on in the first 6 months and what the other projects are in the next 6 months. We will have a project manager hopefully starting in July. We will advertise that very soon, subject to funding, but I'll probably even get the job ad out before second and final reading, and we will caveat that subject to funding. We'll hire another project manager in January. Those both new positions will be true construction project managers. There's also some part-time positions in the budget, and I intend to hire a part-time project manager or 2. I've found success in the past. Brian and I were comparing notes. Some of our success together has been from, I would say, quasi-retired project managers that have built road, water, sewer, stormwater, buildings, parks before. And so this is a call for help. If anybody's out there, or anybody knows someone, send them my way. Right, Brian? There's some learning to do on how to spend public dollars, but it's doable as long as we stay organized with your confidence. But I would say also the quarter or the workshops that we have with you for capital projects help. I will do a better job as the manager here this year than in the past to try to get in and out of the workshops with your direction so that I can help make decisions, because the sooner we make decisions, the sooner we can get to work building.
Yes, Beth.
So first of all, again, thank you to you, Mr. Orlando, and your staff. I know you guys work hard. I know it without even seeing it because I see a lot of the results and I hear a lot of the reports and information. It's very valuable. I don't think you can have too much information in making decisions. And I will support the CIP. My wild hair idea I had to throw out today because occasionally I see something and go like, I've just got to ask this. Maybe it's a way to have a good faith, a gesture of good faith to the community. But when I look at the CIP, I think of, okay, what are my goals in saying, yes, we should spend money there? So first of all, I look at safety. What are we doing to improve the safety of our community? And our roadway improvements and our pathway improvements are doing that all the way through to fleet management. You mentioned the older vehicles and making sure we have safe vehicles. I heartily endorse that as well. So I think we're accomplishing a lot with regard to the safety of our community, and I appreciate that in the CIP budget. Secondly, I look at what are we doing for the community? What kind of community improvements do we have in our parks? Are we serving our youth through youth sports, whether it be baseball, soccer, softball, whatever kind of sport youth, it might be basketball, whatever kind of sports that our community is interested in for the youth. And in multi-generational sports, like pickleball, of course. How can we best serve our community and their interest in that? And we're doing that through this plan. And I'm hopeful that the community hears that we have made a commitment to pickleball. It may not be spelled out exactly in the CIP and maybe the same language that folks would like for it to be, but I think you've heard us talk about that today. Beach protection, it's a valuable asset here. We've done that through this plan, and we're going to be doing that through beach renourishment. Stormwater, protection of the island, resilience, and we're addressing some stormwater needs through this plan and also through our stormwater budget. So because of all those aspects and the inclusion, of course, in our strat plan, I think it's an excellent way forward, and I thank you for that.
Directed to John. I've said in a number of different occasions that I'm a supporter of the aggressive investment. But if you look at the 5-year plan and we're proposing something like $233 million within the CIP, I guess there's a logical question. what are we taking on in terms of additional maintenance, operational commitments, and so on and so forth with each $40 million tranche that we bring on?
No, I think that's an excellent question and excellent something to consider every time that we have a capital improvement plan is to consider the impact. But I think our town manager and our departments have been very cognizant of the expectations that go along with that. And so I think we're prepared. We are prepared to, once these assets are put in place, to take care of them. And so I feel confident about that.
I know in vertical construction, you're going to probably pay somewhere down 2.5% for maintenance as a reserve. And so, you know, I'm just adding some numbers up, trying to figure out where you come out on that. So.
Yes, that is definitely something that Brian McElwee will put his arms around this year. Been here 3 months. I keep wishing he was here 3 years. But know this, the dollars that we invested in capital projects this year through ATAX, we also did into the general fund operating with ATAX, and a significant portion of that is the maintenance, right? It's that deferred maintenance that we're finally getting to. You will see, and you should see, the improvements we've made at the beach. Those are maintenance dollar investments. And so not all of our dollars in the budget that I would bring forward are all capital without that balance of maintenance.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because on the other side of the capital investment is the commitment to invest in the details. And I applaud staff for doing that as well.
Thank you, sir.
Well, if I could jump in too, we do a really good job in estimating our operating. And I know Aaron, through facilities and the beach program, anticipate over the coming year, the additional maintenance responsibilities, and to make sure that when we build it, it maintains that high level expectation we all have. So.
Thank you.
All right, any other general comments? All right, seeing none, we'll open up to the residents to say a few comments. So who has some public comments? Mr. Babel.
A couple of comments. First of all, Mark and team, you did a great job. I can remember 15 years ago when the SIP was done in conference room 3, and all the conference was over, and they said, we'll vote. Okay, and say, are there any comments from the public? It was already done, and that was about it. So you did a great job. Thank you. Just a couple of real comments, though. The person who was here this week and knows a lot about money that flows throughout the United States, and there's an inordinate amount of money coming in Washington under a lot of pipes. And he says the money is very easy to get. You just have to know where it is and how to get it. One example is money is pouring into DOTs. DOTs are using them to make roadways so that cars can go faster and quicker. That's where it's going. And it was intended to go make roads safer, but they're not doing it for that intention. For any projects you have that have safety related to it, you can get it from SCDOT. They may not like you to give it to them, but they have it, and it's out there. So I'd encourage you to do that, okay? The other thing is speed kills. Let me give you an example. At 20 miles an hour, if somebody gets hit on a bicycle or walking across, they have a 80% chance of living. At 40 miles an hour, the chances of living, if you're walking or biking across the street, is 20%. Look at Gumtree Road. Why aren't people going to school on bikes in Gumtree Road? Would you send your kid to school on Gumtree Road on a 40-mile-an-hour street where everybody goes more? We've got to get kids from the Native Island community to school on bikes and walking. Okay, we've got to take care of speed, and I'm suggesting that's a great place to start. Gumtree Road, and we got to do it throughout the whole system. People are just driving too fast completely around our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Mr. Hoagland. Mr. Hoagland? Mr. Hoagland?
Again, your service is really appreciated. Is it too much to ask to just fix the illegal parts? Because it really kind of reflects bad on the good parts. So I think you need to really think about that. because it's a proven fact we have illegal stuff going on. We need to defund the 11 million to the chamber. Put this towards pickleball. Put it towards bike paths. Acquire land to protect. Tourism is generated for free by technology. I've told you all this over and over again. You've got to accept that reality. If you don't know about technology, please learn. What law made it legal for you as taxpayers' proxy to use taxpayers' funds to fund the dredging at Harbortown? What law made that legal for you to do that? To use our money? You're the steward of our money. And any lands in private gated communities, for that matter, that the public does not have access to, that the HOAs are supposed to pay for. You got to get this $600,000 back and put that towards pickleball. And again, you can't use public funds for private use that's not for the benefit and reason of the public good. What makes it legal to hand Bill Miles $11.5 million in tax monies to spend secretly and to tell you he's not going to show it to you, and then take it to Canada, generate a $600,000 salary, a $2 million house, a house in cashiers, world travel, God knows what, because we've never seen his accounting. We don't know what he's spending it on. There will be 2 agencies, ad agencies, that will bid for the DMO this year. I want you all to be aware of that. And they're going to offer to do the job for $500,000, and they're going to tell you to save $11 million, and they're going to prove it and show it to you, and you can take that $11 million and put that towards pickleball and anything else you want. My last question is, next to last, when will a light be installed at Windmill Harbor before a death occurs? Can somebody tell me that? And then lastly, again, Mr. Perry, do me a favor. Get the accounting from Bill Miles. Tell him you're going to sue him if he doesn't give it to you, friend or not, but we can't have that theft continue, and we can't have you lie about it. You've got to clean it up. I'd be more than happy to accept your apology and forgive you for lying. But you got to come to grips with that you did lie. And you got to get that money from Bill Miles, or you got to sue him. You understand that? I think you do. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You want this power of attorney, or do you want to put that document? You need that document?
You need to give that to the clerk of court.
Do you need it? Do you want this document?
If you have a document to give, you need to give it to the clerk of court after you speak. Do we have any other public comment? Seeing none. Mr. Orlando, again, great job. Thank you to staff and everybody else, the heads of the departments that put this together. Thank you for the input that we've received. And if there are no other comments, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
There you go.